guys, I am Crystal Sky, and today we are going to be reviewing a whole bunch of different palettes I have. As you can see, they're stacked up here. So first, let me get the off-brand no paints out of the way. So these are empty palettes. I got this one at Walmart, and I hate it. This is one of the first palettes that I got, and I'm not a fan. So this is what the inside looks like. It's got a little thumb holder here, which I will never use. And places to put your brushes, again, I'll never use. These flat pans are nice, but the pans themselves are too deep. I'm not a fan at all of these pans. They're too deep and it's hard to get the paint out of them. And in here, again, this comes empty, so in here were paints that dried that I don't care about. So yeah, I'm not a fan of this palette. It feels, the pans are too hard to get the paint out. This is, the brand on it is Lowell Cornell, at least that's what it says, and it's just, it feels flimsy, it feels plasticky. I think I got it for like $1 or $2, and in my opinion, it's just, I'm not a fan. There's no storage, there's a thumb holder, sure, you can, look, I'm holding my palette, and you could put it in there. I don't like it, and it's too big to hold on your thumb for long periods of time. So that's why I don't like this palette. This one, I'm also not a fan of. This one I also got at Walmart for really cheap. As you can see here, these pans had watercolors in them, and watercolors reactivate when you put them in the pan. I don't know what it is about this palette. They did not reactivate, and they got stuck. Water does not get this out. I don't know why that's the case. It's awful, too deep, it's hard to get the paints out. And there's a little tiny little place here to mix, and it's so tiny. I'm just not a fan, honestly. So that's why I don't like these two palettes. Let's talk about, let me clean up here. Let's talk about my favorite. This is the Artist Drove watercolor palette. Got this on Amazon for about 20 bucks. As you can see here, this I have replaced with a different paint. It looks, it has a different color, and it looks a different shade. These are all original paints besides this one. And this one I never use because white watercolors is absolutely useless. I actually use gouache in this palette when I use this palette. And so you guys know, you can put the water brushes in here, full size, you can fit them in, you just put them in there. I have them taken out because I put them in my pen case. So that space I don't really use. Mostly when I go out I use this different palette, so I barely use this when I go out. But I love the mixing area, and it comes out, so if I want to wash it, oops, it won't come out right now, there we go. So it comes out, and if you want to wash it, as I've washed this several times, and it comes alright, it comes out nice, it's a little colored, but it comes out pretty nice. I wash it pretty much immediately, and if you don't, it stays in there. You could also use this as extra mixing pans, as they have a little ridge there, if you feel like. And this just pops right in there. It comes out sometimes, but it doesn't bother me at all. The paints are awful, -10 for the paints, they're awful, but this is still my favorite watercolor palette. The pans are nice and deep. This is a Winsor & Newton Cotman brand. I'm not sure, I think it's Sienna, but it's the paints, filling the paints with their corresponding colors is my plan for this palette eventually, once I use all of these colors that I'm not a fan of, with Winsor & Newton Cotmans, which is my favorite type of paint. So that's the functionality of this palette, that's why I hate it, and that's why I like it. It's my favorite. Again, it's very compact and easy to travel with me. It's great. My favorite. I'm still trying to figure out how to use all these paints, but some of the colors I don't use that often. So we got two more here. First, let's take a look. This is a new palette that I got, and it's not really a palette. This is the Kuretake watercolors, the Gansai Tambi 12 watercolor set. I have used these, but not so much. There's no space for mixing. This is cardboard, so it's like paper. I'm sure you could mix on this plastic sheet that you have, but I don't know why you would. Mix on a different palette or something. The trays come out. Oops. Well, you get the idea. These come out. They're a little tough to get out. There's a bar here in between each set so they don't move around. And the pans are huge. The color payoff is great, and I like the paints very much. But again, this is not a palette. I would suggest, or what I've been thinking about doing, is getting a palette that can hold these, and buying a palette just for these. And then maybe labeling them in English. I can speak Japanese and read Japanese, and there's actually hiragana on the edge here. So it's much easier to read. I can't read the kanji, but I can read the hiragana pretty fluently. And it's really nice, but the pans are just way too big. Also, they included a white. White watercolors, to me, just to make the colors a little bit lighter. But you could use water for that, so what's the point? Again, it's in cardboard, so when I go to use it, I usually use a spritzer bottle to spritz my watercolors and then use it. But I'm afraid to do that in this palette, because this is cardboard, and if it gets wet, I don't know, maybe it could like warp or ruin or something. I don't know. So I've just been putting water in it with a dropper, which is not the way I like to use watercolors in general. So there's that. I'm thinking about putting this in another pan, in another palette. If I can find one that'll hold the pans that are that large. And again, they have a swatch sheet, so you can swatch them, but I didn't do that on there. So there's that one. Then I have the Sakura Koi Watercolors Pocket Field Sketch Box. So this is the box. It lays flat. This is my little sketch page, or my swatch page. It's got a palette that you can fit in here, or you could fit it in here, or you could fit it in here, or you could balance it on your head. But this way, it does cover the whole top row on this end when you put it in there like that, so you really couldn't get underneath there at all. So I don't use it like that. I just put it in here. It makes awful noises when it moves around, but at least it sits in the top like I want it. There are sponges here, which you can use for cool effects. I don't use them very much, so wasted. It's pretty much wasted on me. Some of the paints, as you can see, have cracked in the palette. They just look cracked, but it's only a couple of them, not all of them. It's got a really nice amount of colors. But the way they want you to use this watercolor brush is they want you to take the watercolor brush, put the thing in, and take it apart every time you want to use it. And I just don't like that. So it can't fit a whole brush in. It can only fit in a half a brush, and you put this in to mitigate the water. So I don't even use it, just like I don't use the other one. Again, I also don't use the sponges. If you guys didn't know, in this palette, this comes out. This bit here, you see how it's kind of wobbly? This can come out, and it's almost like a plasticky type packaging. It's not like a pan set. It's like a plasticky type thing that you would find in like a very, very cheap thing. So all of the pans are in this weird plastic packaging type thing, and not in individual pans. So that's a little bit annoying. And in general, I just wasn't a big fan of this set. The paints were nice, but I mean, that was it. It's too big to travel with. And then we have this. This is the Winsor & Newton Cotman set. It is a very small set. It's got 3 little things up here, and it comes with a little travel brush. Now, I've never used this travel brush, funnily enough. It's great. You just put it on here like this. It's Winsor & Newton. It feels like a nice brush. It's still a little stiff because, again, I've never used it. But I think I would if I took it with me. But it doesn't have the colors that I use all the time. It's got some blues. It has 2 greens, a burnt sienna. So it's got 2 yellows, an orange, and a red, and like a magenta color. And you can see I have used them pretty extensively. I think this color, or maybe this color, are the 2 biggest ones. And I've used them pretty extensively because Winsor & Newton Cotman is my favorite type of paint. But it's just too small. I couldn't find a good medium between too small and too large. That's why I like the Artist Drove paints. So let's take a look. We're going to test the paints on all different types of paper. And I'll show you guys what I like about each. So this type of paper is the Strathmore watercolor paper. It's cold pressed paper that Strathmore has, and it's one of the best paper that I use. I've mostly used it for swatches and rudimentary doodles. Nothing big. And we're going to be using my favorite brush set. This is the Winsor & Newton Cotman brushes. Maybe I'll even use that travel brush to show you how that works. So first, I guess we'll use the koi watercolors we'll use first. Again, I'm going to put them in there, and then I'll spritz them, right? Oh, my spritz bottle. There we go. Alright, so just spritz your paint a little bit. That activates it, and since some of these are cracked, it's going to be a little annoying to work with them. My desk is a mess, so you'll have to give me a second here. There we go. Ooh. Okay. So we're not going to be really doing any mixing. Let me get my... There we go. Oops. Put that back there. Let me get my water out. This is a jar that I use at home. I'm a big fan of using them. So, I mean, we'll swatch every color. We'll get a good, again, white. You can, it's barely anything there. I don't know why my paper has some little black dots all over it. Don't worry, we have other paper too that we can try. So that's the yellow. I'm trying not to use that much water, but that color came out really a little watered down there. There we go, we'll add a little bit of water. It's a little bit dark. So we have a whole bunch of stuff going on here with this paints. Okay, we're just going to use the same water. I'm not going to go crazy because I believe I have swatched this stuff out for you before at some point. My little doggy wants to come in. She can't come in, I'm recording. Bella, stop it! Bella wants to come in. She's a big baby. Stop it! That color, did you see that? How it was very rough? It was a very rough color. Hold on, I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. My doggy is pretty annoying. But I love her anyway, she's furry and cute. But did you see there how it turned out very rough? Right? Very rough indeed, that color. So this is like a skin tone almost. Color there. We're just swatching them really quick here to show you guys the different paints and colors. Getting a little gradient action going on. Now, I love Winsor & Newton Cotman brushes. They're my favorite type of brushes. But this big brush here is probably the only one that I'm not 100% a fan of. And that's because it doesn't, when it's wet, sometimes it doesn't go back to the shape that I want it to. Which is, you know, a little detrimental. That's alright, it's a pretty magenta color. Is it in frame? Yeah, you guys can see. Doesn't really move though once it's down on the paper. Oops, I'm sorry guys, I hit you. Got a nice magenta here. Let's see if we can get a little bit more on that color. Yeah, a little bit better. That's a more purpley color, that one. Alright, now we're headed into the purples. Again, I'm not using that much water, and it looks very watered down. I didn't spritz it that much, and I'm dabbing my brush after every time on the rag. It's still not... It's coming up very wet. It has been a while since I used these colors. Looks like the pigment's really not held up well. Alright, let's use the blue. Swatches are kind of big. I usually make much smaller swatches. I should use a smaller brush. That one turned out nice. It's a nice color. Let me use a smaller brush here. I know you're not supposed to leave your brushes in your water, but for a little bit it should be fine. So I'm gonna use a much smaller brush so I don't waste too much paint. We're gonna go with this nice purple color. Ooh, look at that. It's like a bluish purple. Ooh, that doesn't move at all once you, there we go. Still too big, I think, this brush. It's a really tiny brush. This is 3mm. You know, I wanted to go a little bit smaller. Yeah, I can do another one down here. That's better. Doesn't look so out of place. Again, some of these colors don't really move. You can see there that they're not moving 100%. So we get a nice green. It's a pretty green. Kind of dry brushing, which is not my intention. Got some gradients going on. Oh, paints are actually starting to get dry already. Now you guys know that I just spritzed them, so it's weird that it would get dry already. Oof, I have to spritz them again. I do live in Florida. It's usually very humid here. Alright. Get a little bit darker color there. There we go. They have a lot of greens in this palette. A lot of different color greens. You need a lot of water to make them move, just in general. Now I'm using the same water, but I am cleaning the brush and the ragging them out when I move them, so that turned out to be an alright color. Again, very dry in the palette, some of these. Let's try and get a... There we go, that one moves nice. This one is one of the very cracked ones, a brown. Oh, I'm running out of room here. Can you guys see that? I'm not sure if you can. There we go. Now you can see the whole top that you couldn't see before. So we got a black. This one I find it's kind of like a gray. It's not 100% black. I think the black is next. I had to put a lot more water on some of the ones that I was swatching because they got dry so quickly. These ones eat water just up. As you can see, that one, that's not my brush, and I put a lot of water on it. And it still looks very grainy, as you can see there. So this is all the different colors from the Sakura Koi watercolor set. Now we're on to the Artist Drove watercolors, and again, the one of the colors is a Cotman. So we're just going to do a couple of these colors, not a crazy amount, because I've said before that these are not very good watercolors. So I'm going to use the big brush because we're not doing as many. First, let's take the Winsor & Newton Cotman color, just so I can show you what color is not its own and what I prefer. So this is the Winsor & Newton Cotman for this color that I've replaced. It's a color that I use pretty often. I mix it for dirt or skin colors. It's great for skin colors. As you can see, it drags pretty well. It's a pretty good color. Alright, let's try some different colors here of this paint. I'm just going to use a little bit. I don't want to go overboard. Redo them a couple of times. Oop. Some water in there. They don't drag nearly as well as the Winsor & Newton Cotman. And there's a harsh line here. But they are very sparkly colors. Very sparkly. There's a lot of pale colors. Oh, see that with the rag there? Alright, so we did some greens. Let's do some blues since I'm not doing all of them. That's a really pretty color. Isn't that pretty? But again, it doesn't drag as well. So let's do some reds now. Just doing these in the middle of the paper there. It's a really pretty color, right? This, in my opinion, these look rougher than the Sakura Koi ones. You can tell that they're a bit cheaper, but they drag a little bit more. You can spread them out with water much easier than the Sakura Koi ones. And, you know, this is from my beginner experience. So I mixed these two colors together. I wanted to see what would happen. So we didn't do any mixes in the Sakura Koi one, but as you can see, this is very rough here. Very rough mixing. You can see the two different colors in that. This is like it's like a pinkish color. There's the pure color. And it barely drags, this one. But a lot of water to drag that one. So all of these different colors, they're all different. They all react differently. This one I spritzed and it still needs a whole bunch of water for that. What happened there? I don't know what was that. I cleaned the brush off thoroughly, but I still got a little bit of different color. Sorry, just a tiny line there. So as you can see, I'm not going to do all of these. They're very rough. You can see in here, compared to how the Cotman dried, you can see how there is a definite pool, and it's moving from one side to the other. There's a line here, definitely, but it pulled out evenly. Look how even that color is. And these colors all pulled out differently. Right? And I dragged them out about the same. That one pulled in multiple directions. So I'm just not a fan of the Artist Drove. I don't want to call out Arteza. The Artist Drove paints, but I love the palette. Hence why I put the Cotmans in. Alright, let's take a look at the Cotman one now. This is the tiny little Winsor Newton Cotman. Let me use this brush for the first time. Just on camera here. We're just going to use the same page. We've got a little bit of space left. I don't want to use all of my good paper. It's kind of hard because I have a very deep well here. There we go. The brush is working pretty nicely. At first it felt very stiff and now it doesn't. Now, let me spritz. Let me spritz my colors. Two little spritz there should be fine for Winsor Newton Cotman. Let's get this nice yellow color. Yeah, look at that. Oh, it's spreading out as well. There we go. Doesn't hold as much water as the other one that I was using. Let's get some nice orange. Look at how pretty these colors are. You can definitely tell the difference. Kind of dry brushing there. Sorry about that. Still getting used to this little brush. So this is a very similar color to the one right next to it. As you can tell, I put a second layer on it and it suddenly became a much deeper, much more brilliant color. And I layered on a couple of times with that Artist Drove one and it just doesn't come out as well. Look how pretty that comes out. Very flat. Very nice spread of color. Very easy, it lifts up easily. It's just in general a nicer set. Alright, let's try the red. Ooh, that's like a magenta type of red. There's no real pure red in this palette. But that's alright, because I believe this is like a cyan red, which is supposedly a better color. Let's get some more red on there. It really moves. Oh, goodness. Getting a phone call in the middle of recording. It's okay. That's Gladstone. I don't know anybody from Gladstone. It's kind of like a stream almost. As you can see, that color payoff was ridiculous. I didn't need as much for that one as I did. There we go. Now it's finally starting to get lighter with the water. Wow, look at that. That one turned out really nicely. Alright, we don't have to do all of these. Let's do a green and a blue. But again, these are my favorites. It's hard to see in the pans what colors they are. That might be the only drawback here. Still trying to get used to this brush. It's very small. I would use this as maybe a details brush, but I would never use it for like big washes. Maybe like a tiny little painting here. Right? That's about it. Let's draw a little tree. So that's about how I would use it. It's a nice brush. Works out nice. Got a little nice big kind of conifer tree. Let's get some more darker here. Brush kind of dyed. It doesn't hold that much water. It really doesn't. Alright. How does that look? It's alright for a tiny little tree drawing. I think it turned out alright. Alright, let's get a blue. So we're missing a blue still. Oh, that's a green. That would not be a blue. It is a blue. It just... This brush did not get completely out. It holds paint really well. It doesn't hold water too much. There we go. Alright, let's try, I guess, a brown. One that I didn't use before because you guys have seen that one, which is in this palette. It's kind of coming apart a little bit in my hands. Why not? That's really pretty. I like all those colors. Alright, so that's the difference between those two. Let's see if we can put this on without messing up their bristles. You can. I might take this with me next time. It's much smaller and much more compact. But there is one thing about this palette that I didn't mention before. Because of the way the back is, it doesn't sit flat. It does this if it's not open. I'm not a fan of that. It doesn't do it when it's closed, but when it's open. Sometimes I put things on top of it and everything falls over. It's just not good for stacking. Alright, new page on the Strathmore. Because we have to do the beautiful Kuretake Gansai Tambi. I'm a really big fan of these paints. I also like the Winsor Newton Cotton, and as I said, it's one of my favorites. I can't get this out from here. And I think these, I'm going to spritz it. I'm going to try and spritz it. I'm a little nervous. I don't want to get it. Alright. I don't want to get the cardboard messed up. Alright, we'll do, let's do a different brush. I love this brush. This is a round. It's a round 7. I'm a big fan of this brush, especially for swatching. It's just really nice to have all that different. Look at that. Wow, right? You can tell this paint is miles and miles apart from any of the other ones I used. I'd say this is a more expensive type paint. Look at that payoff. Immediate. Immediate payoff. Wow. Look at it go. It is still a little bit rough, but the pans come out much smoother. When I'm rubbing the pan to get the color, it comes out much smoother. Wow, look at it flow. It flows so nicely. I'd say these are nicer for flowing paintings. This one has a little bit of a different color on it. Look, it even stains my brush when I have it loaded, which none of the other paints did. Wow, look at that. Look at that go. Look at it in my water. Look, you can tell that it's just way more pigmented. Way more pigmented. Now, I believe this is a higher quality than just student grade, as all my other ones were considered student grade. Oh, that one didn't get enough spritz, I feel. So all the other ones got a nice spritz and turned out great. But they're so pigmented that they stain the water when I put my brush in the water, as opposed to all the different colors. That's how powerful these ones are. Very powerful, very nice. Alright. Look at these go. I love these a whole bunch. These paints are nice. I just wish they came in like a color that was, or in a palette that's user-friendly, travel-friendly. I'd have to bring an extra palette with it, which is frustrating. No, I flicked. Sorry about that. This brush tends to flick. I'm not going to do all of them. You can see the colors being cool here. That flow. That one actually, there we go. Let's let that one flow out a little bit with some water. Wow, look at that. Now let's do the white here. Oops. Oops, I stained the white now. I didn't do it on purpose. Alright, let's do the white here. So the white, it's good. I think this color's dry. You can actually see the white on top of the other colors in this palette. This doesn't happen in any of the other palettes. I think it might just be the color payoff is just so great in this palette. That look at that. Look at that go. The white on top of the red. Sure, when it dries, it'll take a second. You'll be able to see how it dries. When it dries, it is more opaque, more see-through. But look at that. Just look at it. It's crazy. The payoff in this palette is crazy. I just wish it came in a better palette. Let's do a little bit of calligraphy, because I feel like this would be really great with calligraphy. Just it's a world of difference. Gonna be honest with you, world of difference here. Now this is the same color that I love in the Cotman, right? Need some more water on that. It's not wet enough. It's the same color I love in the Cotman. And I think it might actually be more pigmented in this. Look at that go. Wow. Goes on forever. So yeah, my favorite paint, Winsor & Newton Cotman, gets shown up by this paint all the time, and it's fantastic. Just look at those nice big palettes. Wow, that's a good set right there. Oh, my Becky Boo's barking. There's no end to doggy troubles here. But again, this palette sucks. I'm trying to get the stupid plastic back on. Oh. Ah! Well, it's gone forever. I'm just kidding. Yeah, this stupid plastic that you have to stick on above this so the paints don't get dirty. Ugh. I'm just not a fan. Look at that. Gross. Alright, let's try it on different paper. So this was the Strathmore paper. Alright, it's still a little wet underneath, but that's okay. You can see the paper actually boing, boing, and I used very little water. Alright, on to the next set of papers. This is Canson XL watercolor paper. I'm a big fan of Canson mixed media paper, so I decided I wanted to try this paper out. I was about to say, where did I put my brushes? Dum dum. I got some new water, and I got some, cleaned my brushes out, so it's been a little bit. We're gonna start out here with the Kuretake. We're not gonna do all the colors, obviously. Just want to take a look at how the paper reacts differently than the Strathmore. Okay, let's start with this pretty red. Now, as I said, I love these colors. Look at the way it dyes the brush. Wow, look at that. This paper seems much more, not as rough. Not as rough, very smooth, as opposed to the Strathmore paper. Look at that. Look at that roll. Wow. Alright, I like it. Alright, let's try another red. Right, you guys can see pretty well. Oh, that's so pretty. I have to say, I like the feel of this paper better, but I feel like it can handle the water as well. I have done other things on this paper, and it feels like it can only hold a little bit of paper or water. Let's try some yellow. Oof, look at that. This definitely comes off the brush much smoother. 100% on this paper. It's not as rough, not even close. Let's try. I should probably do a little bit smaller, huh? Let's try some green here. Some of this ugly green color. And you know what? Let's do something cool. Let's just mix them. Oh, wow. Look at that. Look at that go. Oof. Just, tap it off here so we can make sure we get enough yellow in there. Oh, look at them go. Just a lighter kind of yellow-green color. Oh, that's so pretty. I feel like this paper is, well, you can mix them together on the paper, which I really couldn't do on the Strathmore paper. And again, I don't feel like it can handle a lot of paper because, as you can see, I used very little water on these top two, and they're both dry, and it's already warping. The paper is already warping. So I can't really use a whole bunch of water in these. But you really don't need any. Look, I'm moving it around with very little water on my brush. Very little water here. It's a little dry. It doesn't really have that same dry brush effect that the other one did. Let's try the white on some of the, get a little bit more water. Let's try the white on some of the dried watercolors here. Not as opaque. Huh. It's definitely shimmerier. More shimmery, more pearlescent almost on this paper. But it's almost it's not as opaque, not in the least. Huh. How interesting. And I blended it in and it came out kind of white, Just do a line here. A highlight. I have to say I'm loving this paper. Again, I don't know how much water it can handle because I didn't use any water here. I dipped it in, got the paint, and I didn't use any water here, and it still managed to buckle the paper, which is a shame. Alright, so that's enough of that paper there. I just also wanted to let you guys see this. This was an experiment. This half was done with white gouache. I have Winsor & Newton designer gouache here that I use a lot when I watercolor paint if I want to do clouds or something like that. And this was done with the white of the Kuretake set, and as you can see, it's not opaque at all. You can barely see it. It kind of looks like a gray cloud almost. So a very different feel. Alright. So this paper here, this is another paper experiment that I did. Let me close it so I can show you. This is also Canson, but it's the Canson Watercolor Aquila. Aquila, it's a cold press paper that's different from the mixed media watercolor paper. Ugh. It's a very long pad, which I'm personally not much of a fan of. But it's hard to get it all on my desk, honestly. But let's try it. We're also going to go back to the other paper, but I want to try this paper a little bit too. While I have these out. I'm going to try it with the Kuretake. Whoosh. Oh, as you can see, it is not as smooth as the mixed media paper. You can see that it's almost forming the grains of the paper. Do you guys see the grains of the paper here? You can see all of the grains of the paper through. Almost completely. So, yeah, that's a bit of a shame. So this was more expensive paper. Like, look at what happened there. Wow. It's like almost, there we go. Still, you can see all the grains if you do a light wash. It almost has a texture to it. So like if I wanted a really textured piece, I'd probably pick this. But I don't know if I like that kind of, maybe for a dress it would be nice. Like a dress textured pattern. I don't know. And I just went over that with ink. I didn't redo anything on my brush, and there's a white line there. Let me dry and see if I can get some more color out of that. No, no color payoff happening. That's quite a shame. That's a really strange effect that has on that paper. I don't know if you guys can see me bring it up a little bit when it's super wet. Alright, let's wait for that to dry, and we'll go back to the Canson little pad here, the mixed media pad, and we'll try some different sets of watercolors. Let's try the Sakura Koi, because I wasn't a fan of it on the Strathmore paper. So let me spritz and see. I'm not going to use all the colors again. No need. Just trying out the different papers at this point. You guys all know my thoughts on the regular paints. So we'll just use the same brush here. And what color should we use? Let's try blue. Seems to be a color we're using. Pretty good. Look at that. Wow. It still doesn't spread as well. Look at how awfully that's spreading. I did wet my brush in just exactly the same way I did the Kuretake, and it's just not spreading as well. Not in the least. It's really stuck down there. Stuck down to the page. Let's try another color. Maybe it was just that color. Let's try a nice purple here. Nice color payout. It's a little bit more translucent, lighter than the Kuretake. And again, not as much payout when you try and move it. Not as much payout at all, in the least. These colors up here from the Gansai Kuretake are almost solid. And as you can see here, there's like almost, like this fades out to white. Like you could fade this out to white here with the Kuretake. But the Sakura Koi up here, you can like, they almost fade out immediately, right? They almost fade out immediately. Trying to get a gradient with them is not so easy, right? I mean, I finally got a gradient with this one, but I had to work a lot. I'm lazy. I don't like to work that much. It was much easier to do it on this. Look at that gradient. Took me 2 seconds. His ones don't look as good and took me longer. Let's try a red here. Trying a red over here. Let's try and do like a little lippy type thing. Like a type of lips. Right? Pretty thin lips. I have pretty thin lips, so maybe keep a little bit open. Keep a little bit open here. The bottom here needs to be a little bit darker in order for lips to be a thing. And then let's take a darker red. I think this red will do. And just put it in here and see if we can get it to spread out. See if we can get it to spread out a little bit there. It's almost like a purplish type of color. It's spreading. It's not spreading fantastic, but it is spreading down the lower lip. Exactly where it was wet. So it is doing that. At least it spreads. I just add some detail to this and it would be a nice set of lips. So yeah, again, spreading issues with these. The color payout just isn't as high as the Kuretake. The Kuretake is the best for color payout. So let's take a look. Last one here, besides the Artist Drove, which is the super cheapy paint. We got some Winsor & Newton paints. Let's go for the red here. Big fan of these colors again. As you can see, the payout, not so high. Very translucent. Let's see if we can get some color in there. Now we're moving it around and there's more color payoff. Should have spritzed them, didn't spritz them enough. And you can see the difference immediately with these colors. Look at that. So that was the Koi, and this is the Winsor Newton watercolor Cotman. Spritz them again. And you can see almost immediately the color payoff is way different, right? We want to kind of like a line here and then spread it out. Lips are not turning out so good. Let's try a different color. Color payoff's pretty good on the blue. That red, just not impressive. And look how easy it was to just obliterate that with the water. None of the other colors do that either. You can't really obliterate the color like that with any of the other paints. So it's a thing that Winsor & Newton watercolor does, kind of almost by itself. Let's take this. Look at that. Oh, that was pretty. Let that go. Complete gradient. Whew. That would be a nice sky. Nice little fancy fantasy sky type thing. Very pretty. I do dig these colors. Again, it's a different type of color payout. So what I did up there with the Kuretake, let's do with the Winsor Newton Cotman. In my opinion, these blend so very well. In my distinct opinion, these colors blend better. Look how the yellow kind of overtook the green for a second. And that never happened with the other color. Just add a little bit more green to get it a same exact color. You see how there's almost a gradient in between them there. And up here, they're blended almost completely. Kind of cool, right? Very different. So I really like the way that the watercolors react on this paper. It stays wet for much longer than even this. This is already dry and this is still a little damp. So this does keep the water a lot longer. The Winsor & Newton Cotman though are much more translucent on this paper. Definitely. And then last one. I smell food cooking. I am starving. Let's just spritz. And then last one, I don't know where I'm going to put this on the paper, but I don't want to waste another piece of paper. So we'll just try and use this space up here. Again, these are cheap paper, or cheap paints. I don't expect them to react like I would anything else. Actually, there is no color in this palette that looks like that color. I'm just going to show you how these colors don't mix well. That's one of the reasons why I don't like them. But there's really no color like it. There's a yellow, sure, which actually doesn't sit in the pan. Do you see there? See how the green barely mixes. And even on this paper it looks rough. Now none of the other paints on this paper look rough like that. Like there's texture behind it, but these paints just look so textured everywhere. You know what I mean? Look at that. Look at all that texture that's just non-existent in every other paint. And as you can see, I put very little yellow and it overtook it immediately. So let's add back some green to try and get that green. And the pigments are just so separated. You can tell that they don't mix well. I mean, these became their own colors. This became yellow with little green flecks of pigment throughout. So that's one of the reasons why I don't like the Artist Drove paints. They don't mix at all. Barely any. So I'm just using water here to try and get them to mix. You know what I mean? Try and get them to become one. And they're not. They're not. It's yellow with little green specks around. And if I add more yellow, let's add a little dab of yellow here. Again, they don't become one color. Not at all. That's it. Now it's yellow in the background and I'm moving the green around. Very strange mixing with these watercolor paints. It's a good thing that they have a lot of different colors because they just don't mix. You can't mix new colors really with them. Alright, time to try out. Let's take these away. So that's the paper. Again, that paper I feel like is very smooth. Doesn't absorb very well. But it is in general a very nice smooth paper that doesn't have any texture through. So let's try. We tried the Kuretake on here, and these are essentially dry. Look at that. I can pick it up again if I wanted. So these are dry, and I'm moving them around again. The paper around this particular thing here is buckling a little bit. Now I'm not stretching them out. I wanted them all to have a fair shake without ripping them out and stretching them out, because I'd like to have my watercolor paper in a book of some type. So if I wanted to stretch them out, I'd have to take tape and essentially tape them to the desk, which I'm not a fan of doing. So again, Kuretake, kind of texture. When it dries, you really can't see the texture though. It did dry to a very pretty gradient, but it dried differently than any other paper. You can still see the texture when it's wet. Alright, let's take a look at the Winsor & Newton, since it's right at hand here, on this paper. So this is the Winsor & Newton on the expensive Canson paper. Ooh! This might be a match made in heaven. Look at that, you can barely see the texture on this one. You can't see the texture with the Cotman. How strange. The color payout is much harder. It's much more of a color payout with the Kuretake, but you can barely see the texture coming through on the Cotman, as opposed to the, that one is just so unpigmented, this magenta color. I don't really like that color. I might have to replace that with a different type of paint. I'm not a fan of that color at all. It's so opaque. Like, out of all of these, right? Out of all of these, this is the most translucent. And I've added the most pigment to it. Like, I'm adding pigment right now, and it just doesn't want to do anything. Let's try mixing. You guys can see my little... Let's try mixing the magenta with something. Let's see, contrast. Maybe we'll go blue with the magenta here, and it should make up another color. Yeah, it did. It made a purple. So it does make other colors with this kind of magenta-y color. Look at that purple. It's a nice purple. Let's try it out. Yeah, it's kind of a dull purple. Let's add a little bit more red, see if that helps. Not really. On the palette, it looks better than it is. It's still kind of not quite sure how to get the balance here. I don't want to add too much blue, because then we'll get back to the dirty kind of purple. Yeah, I mean, it made a purple, but just not a good purple. It's kind of like a blah kind of purple. And that's the only red in this palette. I mean, there's an orange, which you can see there. But just the red is, meh. It's meh red. This brown is coming out of the palette. There we go. I knocked it back in again. But again, some of them are very translucent, some of them aren't. Still my favorite set though. I like how well they mix. So let's mix a green. Now this is a different color green that we're mixing, but we're mixing in the palette this time. So let's mix a green and a yellow. Look at that emerald color we got. Look at that. Let's paint that down. Oh, look how pretty that is. Yeah, that is a pretty color right there. But yeah, these Winsor & Newton Cotmans, they mix almost effortlessly. So let me mix a skin tone here. This is the color I would normally use for skin tone as the base to get that creamy color. And then I'd usually use a magenta here, but not too much. Probably could use a little bit of white actually, which I don't like to use, but we're just mixing a little bit. I want you guys to see where these palettes shine, in my opinion. It's a little bit too white, but that was the whole point. So we add a little bit of that, and a little bit of this. Oh, that's way too much red. Sorry, we can fix it. There we go. That's kind of like a rosy type of color we get there. And these watercolors do dry a little bit lighter. So we got a whole range of skin tones I'm making. We can get a super dark one if you'd like. Look at all the skin tones. Bing. Let's add a little bit of purple, just out of curiosity. Can you guys see this? Yeah, you can see the skin tones. Adding a little bit of purple because I was curious. That's a pretty skin tone. Look at that. That's a blue. Adding blue to a skin tone is really, in my opinion, pretty nice. Let's just add some of this purple. Go nuts. But do you see how easily I'm making all these different skin tones? Like, mixing. Winsor Newton Common, that's its thing. These are so easy to mix. I can just mix whatever I want. It's great. I don't even need to know enough about complementary colors, really. Oh. Just cleaning out the palette here because we tested it on the paper. So the Winsor Newton Common with this paper, you can barely see the texture until it dries. So you can see the texture a little bit, and the translucent colors you can tell, but you can really tell on these until they dry. So when they dry, they look almost perfect, but when they don't dry, you can see all that texture in there. Alright, so Winsor Newton done. Let's try the artist drove really quick. Again, they're actually still wet, so we can probably just get in here with it a color and show you. See how the texture goes. Oh, I knocked over my spray bottle. Very translucent on this paper. Huh. Ha 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 ha. Again, same thing, very rough. Much rougher on this paper than anything else. I got a good gradient there. Again, they don't mix at all, but I got a good gradient there, and there's a little bit of rough texture here. Alright. Next. What is there next? I think I tried everything. Kuretake. I didn't try the koi on this paper. Sakura koi. Missed that one. Again, not a big fan. Alright, let's try purple, or like a bluish purple. What color is this? Blue. Pretty. Pretty. Yep, that's pretty on this paper. I'm gonna try and do a gradient. It doesn't look like it wants to gradient for me. There we go. Didn't want a gradient for a while. Again, rough texture, because that's just the paper. But wow, look at that gradient. So, this is a really long video, but let's get a conclusion going here. So, the original Strathmore paper has a very rough texture. You can see the watercolor takes the texture, especially when it's wet. When it's dry, it doesn't take almost any of the texture, but then you wouldn't know that when you're coloring. The Sakura koi has some rough spots. Even when it dries, it feels chalky, and it looks almost like it's gonna come off. Has like a weird sort of texture to it, right? The Gansai Kuretake set of watercolors is really fantastic, and it has a great color payoff, and it's cheaper than some of the other watercolors that I had here. The Canson watercolor paper, the regular watercolor paper, is really smooth. It doesn't hold a lot of water well, but it's in my opinion very pretty, and you can mix on the paper, which is great. The Canson expensive paper, in my opinion, it warps, and it has a rough texture. In my opinion, it's not worth it. I'd rather get this paper, I feel like, unless you want to do a lot of washes, but it still warps. As you can see, I did a lot of washes here and it warped. But over here where I did very little washes, it didn't really warp too much. So those are the trade-offs with the three papers: the Strathmore, the Canson mixed media, or the Canson watercolor, and then the expensive Canson. So let's talk about watercolors. The Kuretake, my favorite set. I don't like the palette. I like the paints. I wish that the palette was different. And I like the paints a lot. They have a great color payoff, and they're really fun to use and very smooth in the pan. The koi watercolors are a little bit hard to work with. I feel like if I worked with them a little bit more, I'd get better at working with them. But again, very hard to work with, in my opinion, for beginners at least. And the color payoff is pretty nice, but it feels almost rough here. You can see in the middle of the gradient, there's a little rough spots. Right? The Artist Drove is my favorite palette still. I like the way it functions. I like the way it works. Wish I could get it with Kurotake paint in it. So the paint is like -5. The Winsor Newton Common is one of my favorite paints. I really like the paints inside. Some of the different colors are a little bit strange, but the palette itself is pretty cool. The little brush here is helpful, and I like how big the paints are. So if you want something really small, this is a really good set here. And which one did I miss? I think I got everything. So thank you so much for watching. This is my entire watercolor collection. Again, I use some gouache occasionally with them to get some clouds and stuff like that. And next time we're going to be going over some watercolor pens. So we're going to be going over the Zig Art and Graphic Twin, the Arteza Real Brush pens, and essentially watercolor pens, and my entire collection of them. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later.